and losing the first time by 59 votes, ran a second time, got the most votes. And that's, when the work really began was, understanding like, now that I was on the inside of the government, understanding the dynamics of how to actually move something forward. And like, Felix and I were talking about this before we officially started recording, right? But we were talking about the political will and what was political will. And it's funny because there was political will at the city of Flagstaff to change, both by elected officials and by the community. Time after time, survey after survey, the public wanted more bike and pedestrian infrastructure. And if you look back at the records of Flagstaff's bike ped infrastructure planning, for the last 40 years, there's documents and reports that say this is what we want to work towards. Here are our goals. Here are the corridors. Here are the roads. Very specific, detailed goals that I was very, impressed by from 40 years ago, but yet had little to zero action on these plans that were adopted by the city. So the political will was there. The council adopted these guiding documents with the support of the community, and Flagstaff, as I think people on this call know, is a very progressive, forward-thinking, and also a what's what I'm looking for? Active community. A lot of people are runners or bikers or climbers or hikers, whatever. A lot of active people just because of the outdoors. And so it makes sense that we have a small footprint, right? So unlike a lot of other towns, Prescott, other locations, Flagstaff has a pretty small footprint, 75,000 people. Felix, a very small portion of Ottawa, right? Like maybe a 12th of Ottawa, right? So pretty like, and I told the team, like, if we can't do it here, what we need to be the example, So that's when like the political will, like I started having regular monthly meetings, again, once I got elected with our engineers, our city manager, the manager overseeing engineering and also with sustainability. And I just kind of kept being like trying to figure out with our multimodal planner at the city and going to the committee meetings and all these things, what was the missing piece. And it was political will by city staff. And I don't mean to talk ill about city staff because they have a very hard role and their work is very difficult. But ultimately in the engineering world, and I think this is across the states, at least in America, very predominantly, the culture around the engineers is a driver-focused culture. And to get them to wake up and see value in walkers and bikers to the extent that they're doing more than paint, right, Felix? More than just paint on the road, is almost like a revolution of political will for them. Because, time and time again in Flagstaff, they had direction to do these things, but then they didn't. And the same thing was happening when I got elected with our local, engineer and whatnot. And yeah, it was difficult. It was very difficult. But I think for the sake of this group, especially, where you have, if you're in a town that has strong values around climate, even if you don't, but if that's something that you can lean into, when I figured out the linkage between our climate goals and our neutrality goals and our engineering changes that I was trying to push for, when I made that link in those two things, I started really gaining momentum or seeing momentum at the city more than like, because we were running into hurdles. Okay, this is what we should do. Here are some first steps, but yet no action was being taken. But when I linked the two pieces, better roads, better infrastructure to our climate goals and our climate community, NAZCCA and others, that's when the momentum really started moving the city of Flagstaff forward. It also helped that we had a city manager and currently do have a city manager who really values what we're talking about. And we have a city manager form of government. I'm not too sure how many of you have city manager forms of government versus mayor run forms of city government, but it was strong. It was good to have the city manager on our team. And I've leaned into that many, many times when staff has been like, oh, we want to go backwards. We want to go this way. and I'd tell the city manager, hey, what is this? This is nonsense, right? And he would make a couple calls or a couple emails, and then suddenly staff was on board, right? And so it's tough to overcome the car culture that is like so in our face in America. As Sharon mentioned, I've moved to Kentucky, and it's a town of about, I think, 800,000 people, a small city. And yeah, it's a problem. It's a big problem when it comes to bike ped infrastructure. Um, so I feel like, I've left Flagstaff in a really good place, even though there's a ton of work left. The projects to come in the next 5 years are all really good, including 7 protected intersections. We have 7 protected intersections coming online in the next 3 to 5 years, which is incredible. And it's a small town again, right? So that's going to make a big difference in Flagstaff. And we have a ton of separated infrastructure coming in as part of all the new designs and all the new roads that are being built and rebuilt. And to Felix and I's conversation, like there's really a couple of approaches you need to think about when you address bike ped infrastructure. And if folks have questions, feel free to raise your hand or chime in. I know we were saying that we should hold them to the end, but if it's relevant, I'm open to making this more of a discussion rather than me just talking. But I can just talk. But if people have thoughts or comments, feel free to raise your hand or whatever, and I'll call on you and we can have a discussion. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I mean, I do have a question. It's great. I didn't realize how far along we were. So you said there's 7 protected intersections. They approved or underway or both?
Both. They've been
Okay.
approved, they've been funded, and they are scheduled to be built. Yep.
That's great. And are there more? Would you obviously like to see more? But I mean, I'm trying to get a general sense. How many would it for you to say this has really been a success? How many would there have to be?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'll tell you, the battle in Flagstaff is that staff really like roundabouts. The city staff have really gotten turned on to this idea of roundabouts. They've reduced conflict points. They're a lot safer for like left turning vehicles and dangerous crashes that occur like at intersections. And they can move a large volume of traffic. And so it's moving a lot of cars, which is really great for engineers that are trying to move cars. To make them safe for pedestrians and cyclists is a little bit more complicated,
Mhm.
right? And so that's been the biggest battle with all the newer projects coming online. We got like the 7 protected intersections in the pipeline, and then future projects that were coming online that they were planning for were all like, okay, we're doing roundabouts. They didn't even want to consider a protected intersection. And the reason is for the modeling that they were expecting, the modeling of the future demand of that roadway. I'm going to try to explain things in a way that anyone can follow, that isn't just part of this world of biped advocacy. So generally engineers model for 20 years out. So they say, okay, what's going to be the demand on this road in 20 years? And then they say, let's build to that demand now when they're rebuilding a road or building a new whatever it is. So an intersection, they'll say, what's the need for this intersection in 20 years? And they shake their magic 8 ball and they say, okay, what do we need? And then they get some kind of crazy modeling that says you're going to have this much growth, you're going to have this many people using their cars, therefore you need to move this many people at this intersection. It's a total guess, right? It is not science. It is totally a guess. But then they build these massive projects based off of this guess. Felix. Oh, you're muted, my friend. So I'll just finish my thought as you're unmuting, Felix, and just say my point with all that is that if they were considering intersections, Bill, it's this huge battle of size because they want to build 7, 8 lane, 9 lane intersections, on each leg of the intersection is what's called. So it's not like 9 lanes going one way, it's like 5 and 4 or
Mhm.
6 and 3, right? So, but each leg of the intersection, each side of it will have like this crazy amount of lanes. And I brought to the awareness of the city, like, hey, you can't just build 7, 8, 9 lanes and expect a vulnerable user to walk across it in a wheelchair, in a child, a parent. like that's too much. And from talking to towns like Ottawa and others, I learned that 5 lanes is really the biggest amount of lanes a pedestrian should have to cross comfortably. Even with little breakout curbs and little like stoppage points, 5 lanes is the max. And when I said that to the staff, they were like, okay, for one, we got the council to build a 5-lane intersection when it was very highly advised to us not to build 5 lanes because it was going against our own city code, which made it, a legal concern to the city that we're going against our own code. And so I'll just share that at the root of all of the city's issues was rooted in the code. And we'll come back to this, but the next thing in the year to come is the city's redoing their code. And so we're going to circle back to that, but that's the last thing on the agenda, which is future efforts in Northern Arizona. And it's the code updates. It's massive. This has been 4 years in the making, and it's at the root of all of these discussions is the code. But the council went against the code and agreed to build a 5-lane. And I think after that, the staff were like, we're building roundabouts. We're not going to mess with this anymore. And then they can build, smaller foot roundabout and move huge amounts of volume of people. Bill, really quick, I want to go back to you just because that's a response to your question.
So I was just questioning how much influence we can have on the code.
Tremendous, absolutely tremendous. Let's circle back to that.
Okay.
Felix.
Yes, I have just one comment about those traffic engineers. We have obviously the same thing, the culture of the traffic engineers, and this is very hard to overcome. Maybe the new generation will come which have different mindset, but essentially they are optimizing the traffic flow. And by traffic flow, they mean the current traffic, because the pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, you can measure somehow. Pedestrian traffic, you cannot measure at all, right? So you cannot optimize the pedestrian traffic flow.
Right.
One of the one of the argument which we are using in our advocacy work, and that somehow, gets the buy-in from the community, is the safety issue. All the surveys we had about whether people will use bike more and whatever, the main reason why people do not use bikes is they are afraid. They are not feeling safe on the road, and obviously even those pylons, along the street, not to mention the painted bike lanes, do not give the people the same sense of safety. The sense of safety is when there is a really, separated infrastructure, and this is what we are pushing for. And just one comment about the roundabouts. We do have right now the design for 3-lane or 2.5-lane each direction roundabouts, and it will be a protected intersection for pedestrians. And so, if you force the engineers to do that, they will do that, right? Yes, they are not keen to do that if they don't have to. So this is where you need to push, right?
Right.
Thanks.
I appreciate you sharing that. Sharon, can you make it so that I can share my screen? You get to enable guests to share screen. Felix, great points. Let me see. I want to show you all something. I want to show you 2 things that came to mind. So it's host disable participant screen sharing. I had to go under settings. Let's see. View slideshow. Awesome. Okay, check this out. I love this graphic. There's 2 things on here. At the top is really what I wanted to point out, but we'll talk about both here. On the top is what Felix was talking about with the paint and safety levels, right? Okay, so for one, I want to say that it's not about safety when you talk to engineers, it's comfort. I learned this after 3 years. It's comfort. In an engineer's mind, every roadway in your town, as big and as dangerous as they are safe.
Yes.
Because it's technically safe. Legally, it's safe. They are off the hook. It is safe. They check the box. We're good as city engineers. When you talk about comfort levels for vulnerable users, whether it's walkers or bikers or vulnerable walkers and bikers, that's when you got them. And that's the one that are like, oh shoot, this person means business. They know how to speak our language. And when I realized that, our engineer started squirming with me on the phone. And he said, Adam, I'll never forget this moment. He goes, Adam, this was after an hour and a half of debate, him and I. We debated all the time. This was years ago, but he goes, Adam, I will never prioritize the comfort needs of a vulnerable pedestrian over the comfort needs of a car. And I said, here, I will always prioritize the comfort needs of a vulnerable user over the comfort needs of a car. And he was like, all right, we just, and I was like, I'm so glad we have this clarity. Like, this is great, and I thanked him at the end of the conversation. I was like, this is great. And that's when he decided to retire, not too long after that. Because he's like, what you're asking for, I can't do. And I was like, that's fine. Let's bring in a consultant. We're not the only town looking to do this. Ottawa is way ahead of us, right? In ways. But anyways, so comfort levels, I want to make that point. Okay, so go back into this. So when you talk about comfort levels, look at this graphic to the top right. Can you see my mouse?
Yep.
Okay, so most of us who ride on the roads today, Felix, myself, maybe others on this call, the people you see riding around town, they're usually in this 1% category. And I joke about it because I say we're the 1%. And not often do we get to say that. So we are the 1% who are willing to ride because we're strong and fearless. Okay, because we're basically doing what is called vehicular cycling. That's what they call it, vehicular cycling, which means you're riding your bike like a car, as if you're a car. And at times you're taking the whole lane, at times you're taking the left lane. You're basically being recognized by a car, almost like another car. You'll never see my grandma or my mom or a small child riding this way, right? Then you have the enthused and confident group, 7%. This is kind of maybe not your crazy athlete. Again, maybe some people on this call, you'll still see them out, and that's a good chunk of people. And then you have this category, interested and but concerned. And this is the grand slam category. This is the money. Interested but concerned, 60%. And I say, I would tell our engineers at the city often, hey, if we can get my mom riding and feeling comfortable here, we won. We did it because she's in this category. And if you can build for the 60%, you are winning. And what does that look like? Safe crossings at intersections, minimal crossing at intersections in general, almost no intersections. Definitely not 2 and 3 lane roundabouts. I'll tell you that right now. That's not good for pedestrians and vulnerable users. It's way too big. And we'll dive into that in a minute here too, Felix. But separated infrastructure from the road, more than from paint, actual infrastructure, whether it's a barrier of separation or just off the road, like those in Flagstaff, the Route 66 path, that's off the road. That's a great example. And I'm sure you all can think about in your towns some separated infrastructure that you can see kids on and feel like, okay, they're safe and it's a good space for them. But then to build to this category, it can't just be a 2-block stretch. It can't just be even a mile, right? It needs to be a holistic A to B network, east to west, north to south, all the things considered so that you're not leaving people in bad situations, right? So then this last category, no way, no how. That's fine. We're not worried about them. We're talking about this category. So when you look at a city design, you can ask them, are we building for the vulnerable cyclist and the vulnerable pedestrian? And again, that means separated infrastructure and then also small crossings at intersections. And there's little design things you can do at an intersection that go a long way that we'll talk about in a minute here with protected intersections and roundabouts. But yeah, when you see paint on the road, think of this strong and fearless category. And when we think about our climate goals, a third of the emissions in the globe and across the states is transportation. So if you build paint, if you do paint for infrastructure, you're not getting mode shift away from cars. If you build separated infrastructure, you're getting people out of cars. And when you get people out of cars, you reduce congestion. Okay, make the argument for the people who aren't going to get out of their cars. Hey, well, why are you doing that? It's going to cost money. Hey, this is going to help you too. You want better congestion? You want to get around town faster? Build separated infrastructure. I dare you. That's actually going to help you. That's what I would tell people on social media all the time. This is a win-win situation. We don't need to build 3 more lanes of traffic. We just need to take 1 lane and make it safe for bike ped. And then that's how you support the 60% that has a very small footprint and impact to our roadways. A vehicle, what, a ton in terms of the weight, that has a significant wear and tear on infrastructure. The person walking or biking, again, those in Flagstaff, our trail that is the foots on 66 hasn't been redone since it was done originally 30 years ago, versus our roads are redone every so many years, right? Because of the wear and tear. So build to that 60% category and make that your focus. And that's really the crying, and tie that to the climate goals. That's how you reach neutrality. That's how we shift, what we call the big shift in Flagstaff. We branded it the big shift. And it's a big shift away from cars, basically. And then on the left here, it talks about speeds, right? So you see at 20 miles an hour, if there's a crash with a pedestrian or a cyclist, there's a 5% chance of fatality. So basically this diagram shows that speed kills. When you design for 35, 30 miles an hour, you're really designing for 40 plus miles an hour. And we know that 85% of the time, that person in the crash is going to die, the pedestrian or the cyclist. And I'll tell you right now, Louisville has I just went to their Vision Zero meeting yesterday, and they read off the list of people who died in 2024 so far. And I think it was 25 people. I'm not even kidding. It was disgusting. It was so sad. And it's because their roads are marked 30, 35 miles an hour. People go faster, and then there's a ton of crashes. And there's not good pedestrian and bike infrastructure. So yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. What was their solution, just to go off on this tangent for a minute? Possibly more speed bumps and more enforcement. I'll tell you all right now, enforcement doesn't work. We can never afford it. We don't have the money. It's just not going to happen. You really need better designs, period, end of story. You need good designs, and you need better, what's the term? Traffic calming measures. Road bumps, speed bumps are one of them. Not my favorite. They work kind of not. There's other ways to create congestion. We can dive into that, but that's what you need. And you need roads are designed for 20 miles an hour. That's really what you need. And at the end of the day, the speed of which a car can travel from one side to the other doesn't really make a difference depending on the speed here, whether they're going 20 or 40. It really comes down to the intersections. How long are they waiting at the intersections? And often they're waiting. And so it doesn't matter if they went 20 miles to the intersection an hour or 45 miles an hour to the intersection. They're still stopped at the intersection often. And they're going to be stopped there waiting for 90 seconds or a minute, whatever it is. So slow those cars down is the point. Okay. And then I wanted to show you all, let's see. Let me see, I think it's here. No, I think it's here. Okay.
Adam,
Yes.
Bill was wondering if you would define protective infrastructure.
Separated.
Yes. Separated.
Separated.
Here we go. So separated, this is just an example in Flagstaff. But I think you get the idea. It's where it's separated from the road. So the bike and the pedestrian are off the road. And so they're separated from the road more than a strip of paint. When you have just the strip of paint in the bike lane, that's just the standard bike lane. Then they have what is called a buffered bike lane, where it's just 18-inch, 2 stripes of paint that are 18 inches apart. And then they have the bike lane. So it's a little bit better. It's called a buffered bike lane. Not great though, not separated. And then you have like, you know, the curbs with the bollards, like the little like flaps, or you'll see the curbs like a rubber or a concrete curb. And then the bike lane, we're doing this in Flagstaff right now and have been for a couple years or a few years. That's technically where you create that separation. But this is a good form. This is a better form of separation where you're actually separated by a curb. And then there's also a parkway, is what it's called. And in Ottawa and in Flagstaff, especially where you have places that have snow, you need this parkway, parklet area to capture the snow. And this is the engineers, in my opinion, admitting to us that they use the bike lane as that parkway for snow. They use the bike lane as this is the dump offsite for snow. And this is them saying, okay, we actually need this 5 feet because we need somewhere to put the snow. And if it's not the bike lane, we need it to be this way, this area. And it's like, okay, perfect. That's great. Let's do that. Notice here the lane widths. 11 feet is good. 10.5 feet is better. 10 is even better. But 11 is decent. There's also this 2-foot gutter, so it's going to feel bigger than 11. So I would even argue this could be even smaller. But they're planning for semi trucks along this corridor. So they want to also make sure they're big enough. 12 feet, those in Arizona, I-17 is 12 feet. 12 feet is your highway. So if you ever see 12 feet in a plan, that's the highway width recommended. You should never see 12 feet within a town. That's encouraging speeding. It doesn't matter who's driving through it. 12 feet is too big. We're doing it here though. This is actually an old plan. It's actually 11 feet on both of these now. But I called this out and I started bringing awareness to this when I became informed myself and started reading the NACTO, the National Guideline Documents for Road Design, and really diving into this, you know, not as an engineer because I don't have that background, but I almost feel like I am an engineer in a way just because I really understand this stuff at this point and can tell you what's being prioritized and why and how. And I've shaped so many of these designs that it's really fun for me personally. But yeah, look at the different sizes. And so now when the staff presents to council, for one, they weren't presenting almost any of this to council at the beginning. And I was like, what the heck is going on? This all needs to come before council. Like, we need to have a say on this. And then I started asking for more details. And now they present all this information when they present, which is great. And that gives us the ability to say, hey, change this, hey, do that, hey, do this. But as the members of the public and groups, you can ask for this, whether it's through committees or through meetings or through emails. Try to get the details. And like, look at this 16-foot median. That's way too wide. Like, a lot of times they keep a median so that they can have a future left turn lane down the road. That turn lane doesn't need to be more than 10 feet wide. I think they're lessening this. Again, this is an older design. But yeah, this is separated bike infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure.
Are
This
they,
is
I have a
what's
quick
that?
question. Are they doing that on Butler or what? Because I'm familiar with that road. Are you saying that
Yes.
this is what they're going to do or they have, or where are we
This is
on
what's
that?
going to happen. Basically from Milton all the way to Fox Glen or to Sonawa, it's going to look like this with 11-foot travel lanes. I believe a smaller median, I believe, and then separated bike and pedestrian on both sides. And then there's going to be protected intersections at Butler and San Fran, Butler and Beaver, Butler and Lone Tree, and then at Butler and 66, a little bit further, sorry, Butler and 4th, further east. These are the 3 designs that they had presented to us. So Felix, I'm circling back to the roundabout discussion through this. Check out these designs. Okay, really quick, this is a protected intersection here. What is a protected intersection, you might say? Protected intersection, for one, separates pedestrian and bike movement. So you have pedestrian in green, or sorry, I think pedestrian's in white and bike is in green. But notice these bumped out curbs. You see this curb? Real bumped out. That is a good thing. And this one's a little bit less bumped out, but it's still pretty bumped out. And what that does, it forces the car to make a sharper turn as they're turning right. Do you think this is like, you see this little right turn here? This is called a channelized right. It's like a channel. I call it an on-ramp. This is not good. And this has been removed from the plan. This, for those in Flagstaff, this is Butler and Lone Tree design. This was like a huge fight 2 years ago, no, 3 years ago. And this is when council chose to go against our legal recommendation and build a smaller intersection. Because check this out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lanes. 4th and 66 in Flagstaff is 7 lanes. And that intersection is horrendous. 7 lanes right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lanes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lanes here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lanes here. Too big, too big. No leg of this intersection should be more than 5 lanes. So the design we chose was the same design, but with 5 lanes at each leg, and none of this crappy on-ramp channelized rights. You should never see a make the car make the turn. That's the whole purpose. Another aspect of protected intersections, and Felix, I see your hand, I'll get to you in a second, is that there's no right turn on red. The car is stopped back here, right? You see where this car is stopped? And the pedestrian and the cyclist get to go all the way up here. And so they get to go to these like bumped out curves. So the pedestrian, the cyclist is very much viewable by this car. They can see them. And that's a huge issue with crashes, is the visibility, they don't see them. The car hits the person or the cyclist because they didn't see them. But when the bike and the pedestrian are out this far ahead and not just next to them to their right, they're much more visible because no one actually wants to hit someone. At least we hope, right? The other aspect of design difference with a protected intersection is the pedestrian and the cyclist get what is called lead pedestrian interval, LPI, lead pedestrian interval. And what that means is the green light turns green for the walker or the biker first. Y'all have probably seen this in different parts of, town. In Flagstaff, I think we have LPI downtown. No, I don't think we have it anywhere actually at the moment. But you'll see it in other cities, and I'm sure Ottawa probably has some of this too, where the pedestrian and the cyclist get 3 to 5 second head start to start crossing.
Yeah.
And that generally gives them enough time to cross enough that the car, when they do get the green, they're not even going to hit them even if they wanted to.
Adam, quick question. Is that dependent on hitting a signal? The walker or
It
the
can
biker?
be. It can be.
Okay.
It can be. And that's a whole nother discussion about automated green lights versus the bag to cross the buttons.
I think that might be important for buy-in. I mean, and people are going to say, hey, if there's no one there, why am I waiting?
Right.
Right. So
totally. I know that Kevin, who was working with the pedal and pedestrian cats with NAZCCA, was really working hard with the city to integrate more automated green for pedestrian and cyclist situations rather than the bike to cross. And I think that they're making progress. Yeah, go ahead.
Ideally, I don't know if they could do it, but if it was automated, they could actually, if they had a camera, they could probably detect whether someone was waiting. That would be ideal.
Yeah, I think that technology does exist. I forget the issues with it. It might just be a cost thing, but yeah, I agree with you. Felix, jump in.
Yeah. So technology does exist in Ottawa. Most of the intersections have sensors, antiquated technology for many, many years, inductive loops, in the pavement, so they detect whether the cars are waiting or not, and there's a system which controls that. I'm not going into that too much. When I'm looking at that slide, which is on my screen right now, I cannot, cannot stop from realizing, the Ottawa is the city of almost 2 million people. I don't think there is an intersection like that in the city of Ottawa. That, that many lanes and whatever, right? So this is one thing. But the reason I raised my hand is that channelized right turn. This is something which we fight tooth and nails against. And we almost persuaded our traffic engineers, that this is a very, very bad idea, that essentially dedicated right you know, those separate right turn lanes are the very bad idea, you know, that sharp turn, you know, the bump, you know, in the pavement, which forces the drivers to do the stop and go turn, you know, this is the right thing to do, and we have some
Right.
success on that. So I wish you you can persuade your traffic engineers to do the same. Right?
No, thank you, Felix. And we did. We won this battle. This was a battle that we won, and this was a long time ago, and one that I burned bridges. You know, unfortunately, I burned some bridges in fighting these types of things, and I did my best to keep my integrity in place and respect to everyone involved, but it was not pretty, you know, and staff really, it was painful for everyone. But I was like, I'm not gonna let this slide. You know, I just couldn't. And I'm proud to say that we won as a community, and this is not being built. But this is our city's attempt to build a protected intersection and make it bike ped friendly. So I just wanted to kind of show you that there's levels to this. You know, yes, there's bumped out curbs. Yes, there's lead pedestrian interval here. Yes, it's green painted and it looks good, but look at how big this is. To, you know, Felix's point, this is huge. Bill.
Well, a couple questions. First, just curiosity. What happened on that? You know, the bottom part of the screen. That's I can see why that's not good. What did you end up with?
I don't know if we have an image of it, but it's basically a 5-lane intersection that looks like this, like one of these examples, but with 5 lanes. I don't know if I have a photo of it, but it's just a nice basic 5-lane intersection, which is beautiful.
Okay.
All I want is a basic 5-lane intersection.
And you're
And this
basically
is a
saying
very,
you make the people take the right rather than giving them like a
Yep.
flyway.
Yep. There's what's called a channelized right, where it's an actual channel like the one I just showed you.
Mhm.
And then there's the slip lane, where it's just like parallel, it's just like another, it's just a right turn lane.
So, and then I don't want to take, I don't want to take too much time because maybe you're getting to it, but the back of my mind, listening to all this, my biggest question, and I congratulate you for being successful, but NAZCCA represents 5 or 6 different towns,
Right.
cities. How do you get a seat at the table? Because that with all the things that I've worked on so far, that seems to be the biggest difficulty. Is everyone thinks it's a great idea. You might even have some people on the city council that think it's a good idea, but getting leverage and really making an impact seems to be difficult. So I'm hoping that,
Great question.
and that's maybe we can get to that when we talk about goals if we have time. But I'm really, and honestly, that's been one of my biggest frustrations. Being with NAZCCA is everyone's well intentioned. A lot of people sign
Right.
petitions, but to actually,
Right.
when the rubber hits the road, how do we actually make progress and get things done? So if you're going to touch on that, that would be tremendously helpful.
Let's do that. It's probably I apologize to everyone else on the call. My ADHD brain jumps around like crazy. And so I'm let's just jump into it really quick.
What, and to say, looking at those diagrams and stuff, it's great because it's a real life example. We can all, I think most of us have probably been there. We can totally relate to it,
Right.
and that's great. But that's drilled down to one thing. But when you take a step back, my mind says, that's great.
Right.
We solved that. How do we solve it everywhere
So
else?
how do you implement it? Well, and that's the case here too. Like, I was fortunate enough to be on the council, so I had, a lot of power, a lot of privilege.
Yeah.
The staff had to respond to me. They couldn't just ignore my emails or whatever, or push me off. It was great. But
we're getting a lot of that. I mean, I can relate that to, my work with EVs. I mean, we pissed them off and they didn't want to talk to us.
right, right.
And even though it's in the, they have a plan to do all these things with EVs and they're just not doing anything. And we'd ask to get together and they'd take it as a negative. And, so that part is frustrating. So I think figuring out how to be effective is like the most important thing.
So how I would respond to that is in a couple ways, and I'm sure Felix probably could add a couple things too. Felix, let me know if I forget anything. But I would say you have to identify the power structure for one within the government. Who has the power and who are the key players, whether it's certain leadership, whether it's the mayor, whether it's, you know, the engineer who's overseeing it, or if it's EVs. That's probably more of like a public works thing, at least in Flagstaff, that's a public works thing, plus the city manager, plus whoever it is that oversees the public works. Try to get a work chart of the organization and see who's in the leadership positions and map that out. And then you look at a map of the commissions and the committees, all the different public ways of engagement. And so, okay, so for EVs, just for example, what comes to mind is sustainability. The Sustainability Commission for sure. And I think that's it. Perhaps transportation, but really sustainability comes to mind. For bike and pedestrian, you have the bike committee and you have the pedestrian committee, and then you have the transportation commission. You have all three pieces. And then I was even engaging with the accessibility commission, the inclusion and adaptive living. They're called the Inclusion and Adaptive Living Commission. And that was individuals who are, you know, in a wheelchair or are visually impaired. I was pulling them into the conversation. So the more you can kind of cross promote and get behind you and not just be viewed as a sustainability people, the better, right? So that's kind of what I was trying to say earlier about connecting engineering with sustainability. Like when I bridged that gap and then I pulled in this Inclusion and Accessibility Commission, game over. I won. And we already had the public on board and I had the mayor on board. I mean, we won. Like that was like, you know, there was no battle for us at that point. So that's how we got the political will. But the other piece is the public input, right? So at the city council meetings, you have to be strategic. You can't just, you know, I told Stefan with NAZCCA, one of the key organizers of NAZCCA, many times, hey, you all are doing awesome First Friday, you know, on the lawn protests, all that stuff is great, but it has little impact, little to no impact. Y'all need to bring your dang shoes, your shoe strike, bring those shoes into City Hall. Yeah. Come to the council meetings, speak up every Tuesday. That needs to be your strike. That needs to be your protest, public comment every damn week, you know? Because standing on this corner with a sign, like I learned many years ago in my activism, that's not effective. You got to bring the sign inside the house and take it to the people that are making the decisions when they're making the decisions. So that's not just, go ahead.
No, I think that's really good because, I mean, effectiveness, you know, I think petitions are great too, because you're presenting, you know, and so I think that's really good advice. And when I think about goals, because, you know, kind of the lens that I have right now is goals. And, you know, some of the things you mentioned are, I think, actual goals. It's identifying structures, and those are valid goals. I mean, we know that.
Absolutely.
We know that in Flagstaff, but I'm not sure we know that in any of other towns. So, you know, when it comes to goals, I think we need them by, you know, we might have a cap that encompasses 5 towns, but the goals are going to be very specific. Do you agree with that?
Yep. I agree with that fully. You need to really dive into your local power system. Yeah. And you also have to look at the agenda and figure out what's coming up when and what is linked to your goals. You can't just show up and say, hey, we want you to do something brand new. I mean, you can. It's difficult to gain momentum. It's difficult to get that through. That can take years to produce. What I found personally in my activism before council and then also while as a council is you jump on things that are happening that already have momentum. Look at the agenda, identify the topics that you're most interested in, and then organize around those items. When we did the ban the bag effort that Sharon mentioned at the very beginning, the only reason we took up ban the bag with my little activist group was because the city was looking at banning bags. The city sustainability team was considering banning plastic bags. And it wasn't the first time. And they didn't get the momentum before. And we were like, perfect, let's organize. We organized around it. We showed up to council. We made a big stink. We showed, you know, a film at the bars about bags. Forget the name of the movie, but it was really a cute movie about plastic bags. We had like a bag monster, like someone had 500 bags sold to them. We demonstrated, we walked to City Hall on the day of the council meeting, brought all these new people to come speak, and we got momentum, and we had real momentum. We even worked with the other side, you know, the people that were against it. We were like, let's phase it out. Let's not even call it a ban. We're phasing out plastic bags. And that's when the state legislature in Arizona was like, oh shoot, they got momentum, and they immediately, like in no time, within a month, they banned the ability to ban the plastic bag in any town across the state. And to me, that was a huge win. And Sharon kind of spoke to it a little bit, but the reason it was a win was because if you don't want us to ban that, if the state doesn't want us in one town to ban bags, don't tell us we have the power to do it if we don't. If you're just saying that we have the power until we actually go to do it and then you remove it, I'd rather you tell me up front that we can't, And so we at least held them accountable to their own rules towards us at the local level, if that makes sense. And that to me was a win because they responded to our group of a small amount of people. And that was amazing, right? But yeah, that's our state. At least they're showing us their true colors, right? So all that to say, for the cats, the different cats, and Bill, your point, I would have every cat identify 3 to 8 subjects that are coming up on the agenda that they can organize around throughout the year in their local municipal towns. Identify the commissions, the committees, the key council people, key staff that are needed to help with this decision, and whether they're allies or not allies. And then organize. You got to organize. You got to meet with people. You got to figure out the plan. And we can.
And can you give me an example of the topics you're talking about?
Gosh, it just depends on what the focus area is.
Are you talking about like traffic studies, things like that?
So with transportation, you need to look at the Transportation Commission and the Bike and Pedestrian Committees, look at what there's on their agendas and see what's coming before the city in the years to come. What projects is the city bringing forward? Look at those designs, get ahead of it now, figure out what are they planning for? Is it good for bike ped or is it slanted to cars? What needs to be changed? And start meeting with leadership at the city, council people, and saying, hey, we're concerned about XYZ. You have to get ahead of it as fast as you can. And the sooner you do that, the more successful you'll be. I'm sure Felix has experience with that too. And it's like, luckily I got information very quickly as a council person because I asked for it. And even when I asked for it, I got it late. And it was like already decided. And I was like, okay, you need to go back and fix this. And it was not pretty, right? But like, I also leaned on NAZCCA and people, the public, to come show up and speak at council meetings and engage. You gotta show up, and you gotta know the timeliness as to when to show up. You gotta make sure you show up when it's on the agenda. And even, if it's coming up in 2 weeks, go the week before and just speak to it. Hey, next Tuesday, you all are going to see a project. Here are my concerns, and just like preview your concerns so they know it's coming. And then the next week, bring 3 other people with you. Let the newspapers know. Let the radio know. Let the all the media outlets make a social media post. Create a event. Hey, show up to the council on Tuesday wearing red. Speak about this. Create like some momentum. Say some kind of unity. Like we did this all the time with my speak up group. And then when I was in council, I would do it with support of like NAZCCA and others. I would tell them, hey, do this, do that. These are the called, but I couldn't do any of the work myself. But you all did with my support. And it was a good team effort. Like I was like, hey, in 1 month, we got to be ready for this. Like I need 20 people to show up. I need 50 emails in our inbox, and I need some pressure. And I think we can get this. And we almost every time we won. It was so cool. I think it's a secret sauce. I really do. You need a strong advocate on the inside. You need the majority ultimately, but you need pressure, and you need to create that. And then every council meeting, I think in all of our towns that we're living in, films the meeting. And they probably upload it to the website the day after. I download that video. You can download it from the city website. Download it, clip the public comment parts, clip the council people that you like speaking, clip any like good parts and post that to your website, to social media. You got to take a hold of the narrative. You got to take a hold of the agenda and lead, like I've made so many video posts, just clipping parts from the city website, from the video. And I was just using I have an Apple computer, which is good for, editing. But it's just a clipping, thing. It's a very basic video editing software that you would need to clip a video down. But then you got to upload it to social media and then know how to do that in a way that gets, you know, momentum and share it in different groups. We can dive into this in the whole weekend master course, but build momentum and take control of the narrative is my point. There was one other thing I wanted to mention. Oh, the budget. And Stefan and other members from NAZCCA started coming to the budget meetings when I told them, hey, y'all need to be showing up to every damn budget retreat and giving public comments. And I'll never forget hearing the city manager and other people at the city in Flagstaff saying, we never had public show up. And suddenly 3 people were showing up. And it was people from climate topics and NAZCCA primarily. And it was you all. And you all were showing up because I was like, yo, you guys need to be here because I need your help. And sure enough, you know, you all showed up. And between us, we got it done. But the budget discussion for each of your towns and each of the cats is another topic, Bill, that they should be diving into as their goals. Figure out the budget because it's all about the money. And whether it's EV or engineering, I mean, any topic we can talk about, it ties back to the budget, and those budget discussions set the tone for the year to come. And so you might as well get on, again, the sooner you get into it, the better, right? Okay. Does that help in terms of painting like an action plan picture?
Well, I've taken a couple pages of notes already, so I guess it helps.
Good. I have a lot of experience with this. Felix, did I miss anything?
Yes, I think I don't want, you know, I enjoy your political energy, you know. you speak like a politician, which is a compliment in my compliment in my mouth.
Oh no.
What you probably have missed, and this is our mode of operation in Ottawa, is, how do you say, corporate intelligence. Looking not at the power structure, but looking at the processes within the city administration, within the roads department and whatever. Looking, as you said, ahead of time. Budget notwithstanding, you know, you have I guess that every city has a long-term projection. They have a schedule of projects going 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead.
10 years, 15,
there is a
20.
maintenance of roads and stuff like that, right?
Right.
And what we did in Bike Ottawa, which was then an even different name, we had a group of people, volunteers, who got the access to those semi-public documents. They are semi-public in the sense they're not really confidential, but they're not really front-facing the public, right? You really need to know where to go, how to dig, you know, how to look at some schedules, budgeting schedules and whatever. Identify the projects which are going to happen, look at them, identify what the project lead on the construction site is for any one project. And then in our city, there is a obligatory public consultation for every significant project, right? The problem with the public consultation is that people, you know, the staffers come with the almost ready to go project. They present the tables, you know, diagrams, whatever. That's all done deal. And their idea of that consultation is people will come, people will see, people will clap, you know, and that's done, right?
And Felix, they give you 2 or 3 different variations that are very small.
Sometimes
changes.
yes, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Right.
But they are obliged to be there and to answer the questions. And then we were prepared to answer the questions. Why this is done this way and not the other way? You know, and that puts them into the hot seat, right? Because they do not know, you know, that this is done this way because it always has been done this way, right?
Well, Felix, that ties back to the code. At least in my experience with Flagstaff, that's rooted in the code.
Yeah, so in Ottawa it's even more difficult because lots of those regulations are not in municipal domains. There is a province which is kind of like state, which regulates a lot of things, you know, and they have the design, road design handbooks or whatever, you know, and all of that is spelled out. And actually, the bike infrastructure was added to the provincial road design handbook only 5 years ago, before there was no mention of biking infrastructure at all.
Wow.
So now there are some rules, how do you build that, whatever. So they know, there are protected intersection, whatever. Those are not obligatory, but at the very least, if you decide to do this, you know how to do that. That requires, to keep tabs on that, to know. And this is not even political, there are some mechanisms, there are procedures. And if you know where to tap into that procedure, and as you said, the sooner the better, because the more advanced the project is, the more attached they are to whatever they already have done, and it's more and more progressive, the more difficult to change anything, right? So the secret is to get as early as possible to look at what they are planning and to try, to push them into the right direction. And sometimes sometimes it's even enough, on the staff level. You don't even need to go to the political level. You just persuade the staff.
True. And that's the case here in Kentucky, where I am right now. I'm learning city road projects don't go before the council. I was shocked to hear this. They don't even have a commission for transportation. Flagstaff has 3. They have the Commission of Transportation, and then the Bike Committee and the Pedestrian Committee within the Transportation Commission. So like 3 groups that see city projects before it comes, and then they can run it by other commissions as well, depending on the project. But Kentucky, with 1 million people, not one commission reviews city projects for roads. Specifically,
this is the size of Ottawa, more or less, right?
Yeah,
so
same size. Yeah.
Once the city gets big enough, it is a necessity. You cannot do that other way.
Crazy. So I found out there's what I did find out. Bill again talking about doing that research and figuring it out. I talked to city staff. I've already had a ton of meetings with local advisory groups, individuals. I'm meeting with an elected official soon. I'm getting a feel for all the key players, and I'm learning about the politics and what's going on past, present, and then into the future. But I found out that there's a Complete Streets Coalition group of 15 people. It's called Complete Streets Coalition. Complete Streets is a guiding document, policy, value. I don't know.
Yes, I was in the Complete Street active group, which was not even in Bike Ottawa, it was in Ecology Ottawa, and we pushed that through the city council like 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the Complete Street became the official policy of the city. Which is, which is a declaration, and nothing comes after that, but at the very least, it gives us, the lever to talking to the staff, right? So
right. So there's a coalition that works with, that's done through one of the staff members at the city here in Kentucky. So he has a coalition that he works with, and he shows them the projects and they review it. So guess what? I'm joining those meetings. They're open to the public. I'm there. They're on my calendar. I'm going to the Vision Zero meetings. So you got to plug in, and you can't just say we're going to have a rally on Friday outside of City Hall. You have to go in to the system, right? And you got to link the two together, right? I think if you bring the energy from the outside inside, that's when, and you do it strategically, and you see how things kind of add up and stack up, then you're doing things, and it's super great, right? And then you start seeing changes.
So I think this is, I'm kind of understanding that there's really at least 2 parts to this. One is getting inside the system, getting ahead of things, learning about how things operate. So, and that in itself is incredibly valuable. There's another part that I'm a little bit concerned about. So we've got a petition. It's a Flagstaff petition for bikes, and I believe, I'm actually doing some entry on it. I know we probably have 1,200 names.
Wow.
And a lot of those people are lay people. And even though they say we want safety, you've got this knowledge. I mean, I could look at that intersection and not necessarily know that's a bad thing. How do we gain that knowledge? Are there books or presentations, or because if we're going to ask for something, let's have an understanding of what makes something safe. So how do we educate ourselves about that?
That's tough, right? I don't have a clear answer for you other than, find partners in the community that have that expertise. You could, for us in Northern Arizona, whether you're in Prescott, Sedona, Flagstaff, wherever, you can use me as a resource. I am happy to be that resource because you basically need to find someone or get educated yourself. And I could, point you to things to learn but like I just taught myself, and it was just me being driven by wanting to know and just asking why, and looking at national guiding documents and learning for myself. Oh, wait, it says 12 feet is for highways. And if you want slower speeds, it's 10 feet. And if like just teaching myself and then asking questions as to like, why is this 12 feet and not 10 feet? And then boom, now you're getting somewhere, right? So you're not the first to ask me how to be educated on this topic. Felix, do you have some insights?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, that if you just Google the complete streets, you will find the complete streets it's a concept, but it is also a movement. And you will find a lot of places on the internet with examples, with rules, with advice and whatever. There are the urban planners, which are very much into that. And there are some reference materials for that too, right? So you will find the reference materials. The most important thing, again, from my perspective, which is slightly different than Adam's perspective, is if you want to talk to the city staff, not to the city council. The council is different thing. Politicians are different thing. If you want to talk to the staff, you need to talk their language.
Yes.
You need, if you
Yes.
say we want to have a safe streets, this is not their language, right? If you say like Adam said, okay, the lane has to be 11 feet, no less, and the curb has to have a radius of at most, 3 feet or whatever. You
have
need to learn that. But the thing is, you can learn. This is not layman can find that knowledge on the web, and again, complete street are probably the best starting point for that.
Yes. And Felix, just to jump on that, when I was on the council from 2018 to 2022, I would tell people in the public, I became like the go-to person for a lot of people in the public because you are as a politician, like for everything, right? So when I wanted to change the way we did policing, I had to become the police chief. And I know it's a real privileged thing to say, I put on my police chief hat because I don't have that experience. I don't have that background, but I did my best to learn and do my research and dive into the history. In order to change the way we do policing, I had to become an expert. I had to go through all of our policies. I had to go through past documents. I had to meet with people in the public that had done a lot of research and work with the police over the decades and really do my homework. And it's not simple. It's a lot of freaking work. But because I did that, we in Flagstaff now have the CARE team. If you've seen the CARE van, and it's a van, Felix, that's driving around because I know you're not in Flagstaff, and it has an EMT, a behavioral health and a behavioral health specialist. So it has a firefighter and a behavioral health specialist, and they're responding to 911 calls. And where do we get this idea? Cahoots. And Cahoots is a program out of Eugene, Oregon. And so again, I always told the team, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to find a good model somewhere else, whether it's Ottawa or wherever, Boulder, all these different places, and then make it our own. And then I found out, oh, we used to have something like this in Flagstaff, but it didn't work. Okay, well, why didn't it work? I learned why it didn't work. And then we improved it and said, okay, I want to fix this. And then boom, Black Lives Matter happened. There's all this momentum. Everyone's looking for solutions. Here's the solution. And I, started as a council person, putting together meetings with the right people. And like, this is tough from your position. You can't really do this as a member of the public, but as an elected, and you could work with electeds and say, hey, we've done the homework. Here's what you need to do. Adam said, do this, this, and this, and like, you can help elected officials do this in your own town, and and they'll be grateful. Hopefully they'll be grateful for your support in helping them navigate this. And then you could be part of the group as a outside member, Like we had a working regular group that had people from the public as part of it in creating the care team in Flagstaff, just as an example. So I had to become like a police chief in doing that work. When you want to address the roads, you have to become the engineer. So you have to really, like Felix said, know how to talk that language and know complete street values and looking and researching that. Another good resource that I used a lot was Strong Towns. I'm sure Felix knows about Strong Towns. And I forget his name, Matt Icona or Matt, I forget his last name. Felix, do you know who I'm talking about? The leader of Strong Towns. There's a bunch of videos on their YouTube channel that I've watched. They're like 20 short 1-minute videos of their lead person explaining little specific things that I think are really well done. But check out Strong Towns. There's also a few books that they've put out. Like I think it's like something about something from a recovering engineer, and he talks about like overcoming the culture of engineering. Anyways, okay, going back to the presentation, I wanted to show you all a couple more slides. I know we're starting to get late on time, and then open it up to more questions, but I really appreciate the discussion we're having, and I hope this is valuable and you know, beneficial to everyone. But just tying it back to sustainability, this is a graphic our team used a lot. This is from 2019, so the climate neutrality plan from 2019. But this is probably still relevant today. And this is when I was first like, wait a minute, aha, can I tie these two together? You know, so there's that. Just because I know we're a climate focused group. So it's always looking for any tie-ins. Let's see. And then I wanted to see, there's something else I wanted to show you here, I believe. I think it's this one. Okay, so on the topic of roundabouts, we're finally getting back to roundabouts. This is 4th and 66 for those of you in Flagstaff. 4th and Butler. 4th and Butler. These were the plans most recently for 4th and Butler, and this is after I got off council. Just want to confirm. Can you see that? Oh, I'm not even doing the screen share.
Not yet.
That's why. Okay, here we go. Did you see the last slide I showed you with the
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
okay, good. I'm getting tired, so I'm like, I'm
Oh,
getting sloppy. Okay, so 4th and Butler was a recent project that I, you know, worked on as a member of the public, just like you all. I did not have special access to leadership and staff, but here were the plans for the intersection at 4th and Butler. And Bill, to your points about being an expert, look, there's bike lanes. Okay, are there any slip lanes or channelized rights? There are not. Okay, cool. That looks pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about this. That's a protected intersection. You know, a couple things are checked off, right? This looks good. Okay, this one looks the same. What's going on here? What's the difference? Okay, so let's count the number of lanes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's the same. Okay, I think this one's different on this side, this leg of the intersection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's a difference, right? This one has a difference. This one has 2 going north. This one only has 1 going north. So I'm guessing the difference is that a couple of these legs, this one has 2 lefts. This only has 1 left. But yeah, it still has the space here for a left, but it only has 1 left here. So, and then here's a roundabout. Basically, and then I started bringing up, you know, the need to address crossing distances, and we talked a little bit about this earlier. How far is a pedestrian crossing? And I was saying 5 lanes from my research was the maximum it should ever be for it to be comfortable for the most vulnerable users. Even 5 lanes is too much. So already we know this is way too big, right? And I think the crossing distance was like 100 or like 96 feet. What's 5 lanes at 11 feet? 55 feet, right? Plus some gutters, maybe 60 feet. 94 feet, 92 feet. What the heck is going on here, right? Okay, they have like a little buffer space, like, but this is way too big, right? Then they had this roundabout, this massive, massive roundabout. Guess how far it was to cross one leg, like one side? 120 feet. 120 feet. And then you have to walk as a pedestrian all the way to here. And you go another 120 feet. So I was like, yo, 240 feet to go from one corner to the other corner. And we're building 5-lane intersections down the road where it's like 110 feet to go corner to corner. Like, what am I missing here? And so, you know, city staff, like key people who are like my friends were like, Adam, calm down. I don't know how much we can really change this. Like, and I was like, no, like I will organize and make sure that this does not get passed. Like, this is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
But
And so
what did
what's that?
get, so these are three bad ones. I mean, to my point before, you know, as you talk us through this, I can understand all the reasons that these are bad, but what's good?
Right. Okay, so really quick before we get to what's good, let me, okay, you can still see this. Let's just zoom in a little bit further on this roundabout, just so we can dive into this a little bit further. For one, I've learned from talking to other towns, 1-lane roundabouts are the largest size that anyone should do to consider vulnerable users. So already you have 2 lanes. Think about the 2-lane roundabout in Sedona, for those in Arizona. Those are not walk and bike friendly, right? 2 lanes, cars are confused, they're looking around, they're getting in small crashes at times, they're confusing. That's not good for bike ped. So you already have 2 lanes right here going around the whole center. And then in addition, they had the nerve to try to squeeze in this channelized right on almost every leg. And it's like, that defeats the whole purpose. The whole purpose is that the car goes into the roundabout and then makes the turn. And that's what slows them down. To give them this little bypass, this little on-ramp, is totally defeating the purpose and increasing the, and what's the goal? You have to think like an engineer again. They're trying to increase the carrying capacity based off of future demand 20 years out. Absolutely absurd. I found out later this was going to be the largest roundabout in the state if built. So I had a huge fit, and I started sending emails. I started showing up. I started having conversations, like giving public comments. I started, you know, raising hell and just raising awareness. I emailed the whole council, let them know, hey, look at this. This is horrible. I started posting on social media. Like, I made this graphic that you're looking at here with the 3 side by side. I put that together and I put that out to the public. So let's figure out what they ended up doing. I know I have a slide of it somewhere. Let me find it. I think it's here.
And did you just present and say, you know, none of these are any good, figure out something better? Or did
Yeah.
you actually have to have the expertise to say, this would be better?
Both. I said this would be better. I said either you give us a 5-lane protected intersection, because that's the maximum we can go. 5-lane protected intersection, regular, or you do a 1-lane roundabout. Those are the options. That's what I told them. I wanted to share this really quick. I forgot to mention this. This is the priority pyramid that we, as like elected officials, like as a policy document, we adopted this before I left the council. I got this from Portland, and it basically flips the chart and puts pedestrians first. So it flips the pyramid. So you have walkers on top, cyclists second, public transit, shared vehicles, private cars, planes. So this is like, generally this is flipped in terms of the priorities on our roads. Obviously planes not included, but private cars are at the top of the priority. We flipped this as a council body when I was still on council, and unanimously approved it, you know. And it's, you have to know what documents you have on your team, on your side. Going back to Bill, your comment a while back, we have the active transportation master plan as a guiding document. We had the regional plan as a guiding document that all speak to bike ped stuff. And then we had the climate neutrality plan. And then we have this pyramid. And I would bring up all of these things as argument points to support my case and say, hey, this from this, this from that, this from the regional plan, line 7 of the Flagstaff neutrality plan. Like, what else do you want me to point to show you that what I'm saying has validity, you know? So you have to like really navigate the stuff. And this is not simple, but once you get it, you'll be more successful. Let me show you, whoops, the what was adopted in terms of the roundabout. Here it is. So the day of the council meeting, we had organized a ton of emails to the city. We were going to show up. We were going to fight them, tell them no way in hell are they building this, because they weren't giving us alternatives. And the day of, I get an email with this, and I was speechless. This is the alternative D. This was like the last minute alternative that they threw in the mix. And it's a 2 by 1.5 lane roundabout. And so I knew it was going to be a difficult ask because of the code. Primarily, the code hasn't been adjusted yet. So because of that, they are required to build a huge project. So check this out. So you have 2 lanes coming from the east to the west, going into the roundabout. Okay. You have 1 lane heading eastbound right here. So this is a 3-lane crossing. Up here, you have 4 lanes. So this is still 4 lanes. Not great, but there's breaks in the crossing. I should also mention each of the crossings will have a beacon where you can push the button and stop traffic. That's key with any roundabout, Felix, right? Pedestrians need to be able to stop traffic by pushing a button and having some kind of support. You cannot rely on people navigating. Is this car stopping? Are they going to stop? I think they're stopping. Oh, wait, they're not stopping. Like that's a bunch, I went to a big retreat at the city where we dived into that, and they showed this video of someone trying to cross. And I was like, bravo, give this person a prize. They made it across. And city staff and Flagstaff like barked back at me and said, what do you want? That was good. That wasn't so bad. And I was like, I'm sorry, you cannot expect a vulnerable user or a child to be navigating crossings like this with multiple lanes, with cars. Like they're playing Frogger with their lives, and it is not okay. So at every roundabout in Flagstaff, and you can use this in Prescott, you can use this in Sedona, you can use this elsewhere, you can tell them that Flagstaff, every roundabout they build will have RFBs, rapid flashing beacons, which are those lights that you push and they stop traffic, rapid flashing beacons. And you see it right here in the bullet points, the 3rd bullet point, rapid flashing beacons for pedestrian crossings. And you can talk about people in wheelchairs that have visibility issues with large trucks. You can talk about people who are blind or have vision impairment issues and how they can't see if a car is stopping. So they rely on the rapid flashing beacon to tell them it's safe to cross. Again, building those coalitions, not that we're using other people and their needs, but you're speaking up and you're advocating and you're raising their concerns, and ideally and bring them into the discussion. So this section has 4 lanes, and this has 3 lanes. The crossing distance, look at this, level service C. So level service C for cars. So that's like, that tells the city, hey, we're within code, we're good, we're not going to get a lawsuit done. That's all they care about, is whether or not there's a lawsuit, right? 86 feet of pedestrian crossing distance here at the bottom. I was like, okay, 86 feet, that's not 55 feet, but that's a lot better than 120 or 96. So, and you know what? I told the team, and I told this when I spoke at the council meeting, when I saw the design, I told them I didn't hate it. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. It was better. And everyone was like, hey, we did it. Adam didn't hate the project. I was like, this isn't great, but this is better. And you know what? I was like, we'll take it. We'll freaking take it. I don't love it. We still haven't adjusted the code. So, this is to me a win. And I can feel decent about this, even though I don't love it still. It's still overbuilt for cars, in my opinion. But Bill, to your point, I'm not a council person. I'm just a member of the public. I don't have the leverage I had before. So this was a win. But we sure did all the advocacy tricks we could do to get to this point. Now the more detailed battles, for those of you who care about these details, Look at this lane right here. If a car is coming in, okay, the entry angles, to Felix's point, we were talking about this earlier with the details, the language of the engineers, the entry angle. So you see how there's that angle? That's good. But as they come through here, let's say they came from this outer lane. If there's no one else in this intersection, this roundabout, that car can go from here to this inner lane, to this outer lane, and almost go straight through. That's not good. This needs to be bumped out more, this curb. And this curb perhaps needs to be bumped out more. You basically need to increase all the angles to make it as sharp as you can. These other angles I think are decent. I think there's improvements that can be made. And the team's like, yes, we're going to look into that. I don't trust them to make the right decision. I think they're going to do what's better for cars at the end of the day. And because I'm not on the inside, I can't hold them accountable to it. And I'm not even, following this close enough at this point myself. But if I really wanted to, that's where I would be focused on is. And that's what I told the council. This is going to come down to the angles. And all the council members took notes. So at least staff knows that, this is out there. These ideas are out there. I'm not the only one in a dark room like I am now thinking about it. People in the public and the mayor and others are asking questions and they're taking notes. Oh, entry and exit angles, right? Anyways, Sharon, I'm totally off script and I've totally lost the agenda. I think I'm almost out of time. Kathleen, Sharon, Jill, thoughts, comments, concerns? I want to open this up to questions, and I know we also want to give the mic to Bill. Perhaps that's what's next. But I think we covered a lot of ground. Oh, you're muted. I'm going to turn on some lights while we're talking.
I think it was wonderful. I think everybody appreciated it a ton. I learned a lot. I took tons of pages of notes. I think so. So the one thing, you said get to know who's in charge and I know as we get better at this and we go to council meetings, we're going to be able to hear, it's pretty easy to figure out who's anti-climate pretty quick. But when you start talking about this stuff, is it just body language a lot of times that you can kind of just tell people are just not listening? I mean, does it get that simple?
Yes and no. I'm trying to see if I don't know if I like this whole halo thing. I'm gonna turn my seat around.
We know that's not true, Adam.
Yes and no. It's you'd be surprised, in Flagstaff, one of the most Republican council people that might be the most anti-climate is one of the biggest bike ped advocates.
Okay. So
for those in Flagstaff, Lori Matthews is one of our elected officials. And Lori is one of our biggest champions on these battlefronts, because on the topic of bike ped, I'm sure Felix can agree to this. You have people who will come out and say, how dare you take this parking lane and convert it to a bike lane? Or how dare you slow down cars at this intersection? And people will be like, oh, council people will be like, oh, we don't want to slow down cars. We don't want to have angry drivers come and say, hey, you're making this lane smaller, so it makes me feel more nervous when I'm driving. That's the whole point. But you need people that have strong backbones and can stand up. And so Lori does have a strong backbone, and I took the time to really sit down with her and educate her and share things with her and treat her like a human being. And not care about where she stood politically on stuff or who her friends were or any of the rumors that you hear about, her or other people. I would really try to get to know each person and build back to the assignment of the goals for the cats. Sit down with every council member if you can. At least reach out to them and see if you can set up a meeting with them. I would make that an assignment for the cat once they were ready for it, and really drill into some of these things. And say, hey, where do you stand on these things? Maybe don't jump into climate stuff. If the topic is EV, hey, would you be open to seeing more EV parking around town? Would you be open to seeing the city invest in more EV stuff? Just on the topic of electric vehicles, me as a council person, again, going to the big picture of the city stuff, whenever there was a project coming to us, a housing project, I thought, okay, here's a housing project. How do we make it better? Okay, affordable housing was a priority to me. Bike parking was a priority to me in terms of covered parking, not just outdoor bike parking. So that was another topic. And then EV was a value I had as well as a council person for these projects. So every project that came forward, I said, okay, you're building 80 parking lots, make 20% of these EV. And it's a lot cheaper to do it up front than to do it 10 years later or 5 years later or one day later. They need to do it up front and put that conduit in the ground now and plan for the future now. So I met with APS, the public service, the energy company, right? I met with people from NAZCCA. I met with people who are sustainability experts. I met with EV people. I met with our own sustainability team. And I figured out what I was asking for. Is it charging level 1, 2, 3? And then how many can I ask for and not just be like making up something fully, even though I was partially making it up because I'm not an expert. But like I got us a ton of EV coming into a lot of projects in Flagstaff through asking developers, hey, can you build this? And they were like, sure, we can do that. You know, they got budget for it, they're planning for it, they want to get the project through. They want us on their team as like the public and also council members. And sure enough, like, you know, council member Alston Aslan, who's currently the vice mayor, and other council members were like, yes, I support Adam's, you know, idea, right? Because they're also looking for wins. But if you don't generate those ideas, they don't often do them on their own. Like these other council people don't think of it. So you can be the ones kind of spoon feeding, hey, ask for this. Hey, the community wants this. And then like, again, you know, figuring out what's coming before council. Because if you just show up and say, we want more EVs, it's not going to really do much.
It's got to be more specific.
You got to be specific. Okay, this project's coming in. They're building 600 beds. They're building 120 parking spots. We want at least 20% EV parking, energy level 2, you know, charging 2, level 2 chargers. That's a request. And then you show up. And that's how you get it done. Anyways, just another example. So you have to think creatively.
So Bill, are you ready to like kind of start drilling down on goals?
Not really. Let me tell you what I'm thinking. And so I think, you know, we've received a lot of really good information. And one thing that sticks out to me is that you have to be really good at a lot of things and you have to be thinking about a lot of things. I know that when we come up with goals, I mean, I actually don't think overall NAZCCA goals for a bike cat make any sense at all because every city is going to be in a totally different stage, right? So what I'm thinking, Sharon, is that, I mean, I want to decompress with you on this, just you and I. I think we need to get a solid base of volunteers for each city. And then we can talk about goals. But I mean, I took a lot of notes too, and I have a lot of ideas on what the goals could be. But ultimately, it's up to those. And I think you need some strong players in each city to talk about goals because I don't think general goals are going to be any good. And you know, one of the things we've been trying to put in any of our goals that we develop, and we're trying to do it across all of our cats, is to use a SMART methodology. And I'll just tell you what you know what SMART stands for. It's S is the specific. And we were just talking about being specific. Yeah, we need more EVs. That's useless. Measurable. So you know, don't go in and say, you know, we'd like to have more EV charging stations. Say we want 23. Let's be very measured. Actionable speaks for itself. Relative speaks for itself, and timely. You know, we don't want to just leave it open and say we'll get it done when we get it done. It sounds like on this topic, you know, you need to integrate with the cities and towns and find out when they're meeting, and so the timeliness should be related to, you know, when we think we can actually get some of this stuff done. So I don't think it's valuable, Sharon, to talk about specific goals here. Like I said, you know, I think we need to find 3 or 4 solid people in each city, and if we can't find it, I don't think we should even say that we have that. I think Prescott would be really good because it's a I don't know how Flag and Prescott compare, but Prescott's decent size, right?
About, I think the Quad City area, according to the census, is about 200,000 people in the Quad City.
I mean, I'm having a little trouble imagining Sedona unless you can get 3 or 4 people who are dedicated. And from what Adam said, I mean, you really have to dig in and learn and what's good and what's bad, what's the structure. I mean, this takes a lot of hard work. And if we don't have the people to do it, I'd rather not say that, we have this cat and, they don't mean much. I mean, we got to find out if we, and, by entering those petitions, we had a lot of people who signed and said, yes, I want to be more involved. So, we know who those people are, but I mean, just between you and I, Sharon and Jason, I think we need to canvass those people that said yes on those surveys and find out if they're interested in meeting on a regular basis and, getting these goals together before we go much further and talking about a lot of things that Adam talked about. I got a ton out of this, but I don't think we can develop
Right.
goals for what we have right now.
Can I
Okay.
jump in, Sharon?
Mhm.
I also say, just knowing how people are and having done a lot of advocacy for a long time, at least what I think is a long time, people have all sorts of crazy ideas, right? And people get involved for all sorts of different reasons that they're passionate about. That's good, and it's important that people are passionate and they're passionate for the things that they care about, but you have to really put that aside to a certain degree and look at what's coming up at the city. Like, where is their momentum already? It's a lot easier to jump on a topic and put your efforts behind something that's coming rather than, like we talked about, creating your own momentum from scratch. And you can do the second option. It just takes that much more of a dedicated person. Again, my group Speak Up. We honestly stream the council meetings at the bars, like Sharon said, and we just organize around topics that were coming up. And we crushed it. We freaking crushed it. And it was so cool. And people were very rewarded and excited. And eventually we're like, what are we doing? Like, because we were eventually seeing that people weren't getting elected that we wanted to see get elected. And that's when we were like, okay, one of us needs to run. And it wasn't going to be me. It was going to be someone else. But we were like, we need to just get in there and take over. And so no one stepped up that said that they were going to. To your point, Bill, about canvassing those who said that they're interested. So I said, okay, Adam, you're up. Like, you're not qualified. You're not the best for this. You're not, groomed for this at all, but you hate politics, but you're the only one willing to step up. So I did. But yeah, I'd say figure out who you have that's committed, find out what they're passionate about, tell them to look at the upcoming working calendar of their town and find highlight the topics and the dates of which there are agenda items coming forward that are of interest that they might be able to organize around. And then to start doing that research about, are there commissions, are there committees, are there task forces, are there community partners and other nonprofits, and then who are the key people at the city, right?
Yeah. I would, everything you're saying, I would kind of summarize, say, getting plugged in.
Yep, get plugged in
across the whole thing. So Sharon, I think that's what you and I and maybe Jason can talk about is finding some people that really want to get plugged in, because that really has to come before any specific goals. I mean, you were talking about a specific intersection, right? But that's drilled down so far. We got to step back and say, who are the players? What are the plans in place? Who are the players on both, the city or the government side and the volunteer side? So there's a lot of things that have to happen before we.
Right.
I mean, your level of detail there's a hell of a lot of work that went in
Right.
before that happened. And
Right.
we can't jump right to that level. We have to take it. We all want to get it done yesterday, but we got to take this one step at a time. So Sharon, if you want to put something on the calendar for Jason, you and myself, I'd be glad to do that and kind of help get it going.
And again, go ahead, Sharon.
I just thank you, Bill. That's great, because there's a lot of stuff in Prescott right now around solar. Like, they're trying to write ordinances controlling the use of solar in both Prescott and Chino Valley. And Steve Cook is on it, and he knows the particulars, but he needs people to help him. And you're right. Until we have people that we can get some momentum going, and that's the first step, is to actually get people that sign these petitions to actually, and they want to do something. We just have to tell them what to do.
And that is the big problem, is that they're interested, but they don't know how to have an impact. And this meeting, I think, has given us a lot of ideas about how to start, how to get your feet in the ground and do some specific things. But there are steps that have to be taken first, and I'm all for doing that. And Adam, just one question for you: are you, even though you're Kentucky person, if we had a meeting about setting goals for bike in Flagstaff, would you come to that?
Possibly, very, very possible.
Okay.
I'd almost rather speak to, you know, whoever the organizer is, just on a phone call and just kind of give them the wisdom that they need to run with it. But that was actually the one other thing I wanted to mention was that the one thing in Flagstaff that's on my radar, because I plan to stay involved. I'm wearing my FBO shirt. This is the Flagstaff Biking Organization, which is like the local nonprofit advocacy group. And I'm still a board member with them. I told them I plan to continue working with them because there's so much good momentum in Flagstaff. I hate to like totally separate from that. Even though I plan to really dive in here, I'd like to continue to see things through in Flag. And the biggest thing on my radar is that we have our code review. Every project that I can think of coming before Flagstaff, I'm actually really happy about or pleased enough. But the code review, the city got $2.4 million to revamp it. And that's something that they're going to be doing in this year to come. And so we need to just make sure that's done right. I think it will be. I'm pretty sure we have enough momentum that'll be done well. But that's going to be the big thing is addressing the code review. And at the root of the code review, what we need to address just to get real specific is levels of service for vehicles. And then like expanding the metrics of levels of service. So it's not just looking at vehicles levels of service, but pedestrian level of service, cyclist levels of service, climate level of service. Community character is something that we need to consider. What's the other one that I'm forgetting? Business, local business level of service. Again, not just thinking about climate, right? Like think about all the different actors. Pulling in local businesses. Hey, a level of service F for cars is actually really good for businesses because it slows cars down enough to see the business and maybe stop and say, you know what, I'm going to pull over. I want to stop and go in here. So, you know, making all those types of arguments. So the code is the big thing coming up this year. And I would definitely want to work with the bike cat or the pedestrian and pedal cat. But yeah, I'd be happy to be a resource to you all and the team. I just know some of those meetings can go on for a while. Like perhaps if I did join one of the meetings, Bill, it would be like for the first 15 or 20 minutes, you know, and then I'd just hop off kind of thing. That'd be fine.
Well, I think we have some legwork too. I mean, I wouldn't want to bring you in until we had committed, really committed volunteers, and you know, it would be too early to ask for your expertise at this point because
and tell them, Bill. Sorry to interrupt you, but tell them to join the Bicycle Advisory Committee meetings that are open to the public. Go to the BAC meetings. I'm going to some of those even myself. Like that's a great way to start plugging in. And Keith or Kevin is on the BAC. So, you know, it's great. It's really good. That's a great way to get started. And that's where they should start really. What else was I gonna say? There was one other thing I wanted to say, and I know we're almost done in terms of our time. Shoot, there was one more thing.
The only thing I see that you didn't really talking about is, well, the constant reminder to the public and to the council that it's always an emergency. Keep that in the front of everybody's mind. And
that's really more in the past than like that was more of like a note of the past. That was like a constant like battle. Every project, everything was a battle. And it is that way until you really start gaining momentum on any given topic. And at this point, I think it's more of a downhill battle, but yeah, it's exhausting. No, there was one, I feel like there was one other thing I wanted to mention. Oh, I was going to share just that I met with someone here last week who has a nonprofit. Unfortunately, her son was lost to a car crash as he was a pedestrian. He got hit by a car and was killed years ago. So she started a nonprofit and she's like a big advocate now. And she really is a big power player in the community. And her and I met and she was all talking about all these state routes, all these issues with state roads. And I said, listen, those are all really good issues to focus on, but let's focus on what the city has power over currently. So really trying to, again, going back, Bill, to those ideas of find the lowest hanging fruit things, the easiest things to address. I told her, like, look out this window where we were at the moment. I was like, this intersection outside this window sucks. It's the worst intersection I've ever seen. You know, like, let's fix this first before we start focusing on any state effort that's going to require the state, which is not a good partner in Kentucky, especially. Arizona is decent. ADOT actually is a decent partner at this point, I'm proud to say. But you know, even in Flagstaff, I told the team we can't focus on ADOT roads until we focus on our own roads first. So really learning to take the steps where you have the most power and do that well before you start reaching too far, right?
Yeah, small
Okay,
victories.
I'm done.
Small victories are what leads to bigger victories.
Right, exactly. If you can't do the small stuff first, you can't even get close to a big one.
Right.
You know? Any other questions or comments? I know I rambled a ton.
One thing I was just that came off the top of my mind is small victories. Is it possible to get fatality or collision? You know, like we could look at Sedona, for example, and say, you know, where are the most what's the worst intersection, and maybe
Crash
we
data.
target that. Is that
Yeah,
a way to
100%. Crash data. Look up crash data.
Okay.
Every town should have it.
I mean, that would be something early on, Sharon, that we could do is, you know, take the 4 or 5 cities and say, what's the worst? What are the worst intersections? And let's target
Yes.
those. That's a specific
Yes.
goal, you know?
Beautiful.
What do you, and go to those politicians and say, you know, is anything being done there? And if
Yes.
there is, plug in. If there isn't, start something.
And Bill, if you did that, you know, if you started finding intersections, like send them my way. I will give you the solutions. I'll help you get to that final draft really quick. You know, easy.
I mean, I see that as a goal, Sharon. Identify the worst, you know, the worst 5 intersections per town or city, whatever we call them.
And what I would also advocate, Sharon and Bill, is like not just the worst. A lot of times they overlay, but I would overlay the worst with a hierarchy of roads in that town.
The higher what?
Hierarchy routes. So hierarchy routes meaning like the main routes. What are the main routes where people are most moving along? Like in Flagstaff, that's Milton, that's 66, that's Butler. Those are some of the hierarchy routes. 4th Street is a hierarchy route. I'm sure Sedona is like 89A. I'm sure there's like, you know, the 179. Like those are more of the hierarchy routes. So you want to be putting focus on the routes where the people are. But if there's generally they overlay, but like that's the best way is to overlay the two and find where is the highest hierarchy route with the most crashes, and that's the best starting place. So in Flagstaff, that's Butler and San Fran, Butler and Beaver, and then 66 in San Fran and 66 in Beaver. So we're building protected intersections in 2 of those locations that the city has. And then hopefully ADOT with time will get on top of the 66 stuff. Okay. I should probably get going, unfortunately. I know that you all want to talk with me forever.
Thank you so much for all your time. It was wonderful. And yeah, I can't believe how much I learned and however it seems like it's been 15 minutes you've been talking. So I really, really appreciate it.
I'm so grateful for this opportunity to chat with you all and see a lot of you. And I hope this was beneficial to everyone. And Felix, thanks for tuning in from Ottawa. Hopefully this was beneficial for you. But it was great to have you as well.
Yes, thank you very much. It was interesting.
Good. Keep up the good work.
Okay.
Kathleen, good to see you and thank you for everything.
Thanks. It's good.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay, Jill, thanks for tuning in. And yeah, Karen, thank you. And Bill, thank you. Nice to meet you both.
Yeah, take care.
Take good care. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.